Hello everyone, my name is Om Desai, and this is part 4 of my series on how to get a full score on the AP Computer Science Principles exam. Today I'm going to be showing you my Explore task and how I made it and what I did with it. So I'm going to show you everything that I submitted for the Explore task, and I'm going to talk about why I chose my specific topic. I'm also going to explain how I managed to match each requirement on the rubric into a component on my Explore task. Now, if you've watched part 3, it's going to be a lot easier to understand how I matched the requirements on the rubric into components on my Explore task. So if you haven't watched part 3, I highly recommend that you watch part 3 now and then come back to this part. The link to part 3 is in the description. If you remember from the last part, there were 2 parts to the Explore task, the computational artifact and the written responses. Now, if you don't remember what the computational artifact is, the computational artifact is just something visual to show the flow and the function, purpose, or effect of a computing innovation while also identifying that computing innovation. So this is my computational artifact, and I created it using Google Slides. So I pasted images in, I used the AIRO tool, and I used text boxes to put in the text. Once I was done with that, I downloaded it as a PDF to submit. And I made my computational artifact on the topic of no cashier stores. Now, you might be wondering why I chose that topic, and, well, when it was close to time when I was preparing for the APCSP exams, Amazon Go was in the news, for it was opening its first store in Seattle. And so I was following the news, and I was reading about it and researching it, and I was curious as to how it worked. So when it came time for me to do the Explore task for APCSP, I realized that the topic of no cashier stores would be good for something like this because it met all the rubric requirements for a computational innovation. And I also was curious about how it worked, so I could find out more about this and get good score on my Explore task at the same time. And so, now that you know that, let's get into how I made each part of this follow the rubric. So let's move over to the rubric. Now for row 1, this is the only one where you have the computational artifact. And so this is 1 point. And first off, to get the point, you have to identify the computing innovation. And so I do identify my computing innovation. I have no cashier store, and I keep that in bold letters in front. The second part is that you should provide an illustration, representation, or explanation of the computing innovation's intended purpose, function, or effect. So, I explain its purpose by saying that it's easier to find items, it should be easy and convenient, and it was made to have no lines and no checkout. I explained its function by creating a flow saying customers walk in, take what they want, and just walk out. And finally, I say the effects by saying that there's no need to hire or train cashiers, customers are happier, and that there's improved analytics. So, one thing to note is that it's not necessary to have a purpose, function, and effect. You can have just the effect and it'll work as well, or just a purpose. I made mine have all 3, just to be safe. So for example, here is a sample you can find on the College Board website. And it's very simple. It just says the name of whatever it is, and then it shows one function, namely that virtual reality lets you see things that aren't real in the real world. And so this just identifies it and has the function, and it gets the point, and it's very simple, so you don't have to do anything fancy for the Explore task. In contrast, this did not get the point, and that's because it doesn't identify what the innovation is, and it doesn't explain a function, a purpose, or an effect. So it doesn't do any of these. It doesn't do any of these two parts, so it would not get the point. Now, let's move on to talking about the written responses. Now, this is the written response template for the Explore task. And so, when you do your Explore task, this is where you're going to copy and paste your answers. So you're going to write your answers on a template just like this one. So, let's start by opening the rubric and going over each question like we did with a computational artifact. So the first row we want to see is in response 2A. And for this row, you get a point if you state a fact about computing innovation's intended purpose or of its function. So in my case, I say when you walk into the store, it senses that you have come in, detects what products you have taken, and adds them to a virtual shopping cart. This is an example of me stating a fact about the function of cashierless stores, and so I get a point for row 2. Then let's go to row 3. Now, you remember that there wasn't any row dealing with 2B, so it's very likely that 2B was just for the graders. So let's skip that one for now and go to 2C, which is the one with points. And now 2C has 3 rows. So the first row means that it should identify at least one effect of the identified or described computing innovation. So, for example, I say 2 beneficial effects are that customers will save time and that the store will save money, which I elaborate on later. So now, since I've listed 2 effects, that's at least one effect, so I'd get a point here. Note that it doesn't have to be 2 effects, it says at least one, so writing one effect would still get you a point here. The next row is for identifying a beneficial effect and identifying a harmful effect. So the 2 effects I just listed were beneficial effects, and a harmful effect would be that this innovation would make many retail jobs obsolete. So now I have at least one beneficial effect and at least one harmful effect. So I get a point for row 4. The next part is row 5 for response 2C. And so row 5 is for explaining how one of the effects relates to society or culture. So I noted that this can have broader effects on society, that retail is becoming more and more dominated by tech companies, they will have more power, and that income inequality will be increased. All of those are examples of broader societal effects of this technology, so I'd get a point for row 5. Then row 6 is for analyzing data and information. So I should identify the data that the computational innovation uses, explain how it's consumed, produced, or transformed. So in 2D, I identify that there is image data, weight data, location data, and sound data. I've identified the data that's used, and I've identified how it's consumed by talking about image sensors, weight sensors, the Apple Bluetooth, and microphones. So by explaining both parts, I get a point for row 6. By explaining this and this. Row 7 is for identifying one data storage, privacy, or security concern related to data of the identified computing innovation. So if you head down a little, you'll see this, and I noted how this creates concern for privacy, because there's a lot of personal details that lead to you paying for everything. For example, your credit card information is needed by the app, and also your transactions, and you could track conversations with microphones in the store. So all of these things are privacy concerns because the company could sell it or hackers could get into it, so this would cause a privacy concern. By bringing this up, I get a point for row 7. The final point is for row 8, and that's for at least 3 different sources. They have to be less than a year old, and they have to be referenced in text. So I have 4 sources, and 3 of them, this one, and this one, were less than a year old when I submitted my Explore task. And I also have many in-text references. For example, in the paragraph I just was, I noted according to Scott Carey and Thomas Macaulay, it creates concern for customer privacy. Going a little further up to 2C, you can see that Tim Dunlop, according to Tim Dunlop, this innovation would make retail jobs obsolete, and according to Jason Ray, 3.5 million people work in retail. Now, as noted in the scoring notes, you could say according to or as written. That's the option I use. You could also use parenthetical in-text citations. You could use footnotes at the bottom of your response. You could use superscripts, and you could write a numeric number system. So say this is source 1, and then write a 1 where you use the source. So by referencing these texts in text and using at least 3 sources, I'd get a point for row 8. Now, in summary, if you manage to write something simple, you don't have to write a full essay. None of these were more than a paragraph. Then you'll be able to get enough points for all of these, and you'll be able to get a full score on the Explore task if you just remember to follow the rubric. One important thing you want to remember when you're making your responses is to pay attention to the Do Not Award Point section, as this will tell you what not to do when you're writing your responses, and will clear up some things that you shouldn't do that don't work in the responses. You should also pay attention to the scoring notes, as they clarify some things and give you the definitions of some words, which will help you make your response include everything. So if you pay attention to both these parts, they'll clarify things for you a lot. That's all we had to cover for today, and so part 4 is done. In part 5, I'm going to show you the program I made for the Create task, and what else I submitted for the Create task. I'm going to explain why I chose the topic that I did for that task, and how I managed to make the requirements in the rubric match with my task. So thank you for watching, and remember to subscribe to our channel so that you get notifications as new videos of this series come out, and you get notified of other informative videos. Goodbye.